I lived in a haunted house as a kid, but nothing that malevolent happened, thankfully. Though there were some violent things that went down, it was mostly just scare tactics aside from one time in particular, which will be the focus of this story. So for context, the house was built in the 1940s, and it arguably had some creepy vibes to it and the surrounding property. But the focus here is on the attic. It was a walk-up attic, with a full set of stairs going up the middle which split it into left and right fully finished sections. I'm talking puke green shag carpet and wood panel walls, totally done in the mid-70s like the rest of the house. In front of you at the top landing, as well as directly above the door at the base of the stairs behind you, are removable panels on the wall that lead to the sloped portions of the house's roofline, which were used as storage crawl spaces by my father. The left of the stairs had a waist-height retaining wall or shelf, while the right side of the stairs had a full wall which had a modest closet accessible from the opposite side of the wall on the right side of the attic. It also had a small removable access panel for something in it. I can't remember what that panel was for. I honestly forgot it was even there most of the time. My dad used the left half of the attic for his collectibles and stuff while I had free reign of the right half as my hangout spot once I had gotten into middle school. I spent a lot of time up there, playing video games, building Legos, etc. I had 2 chairs, a couch, table. I could pick up basic over-the-air TV signal. I hung out with my friends up there. It was great, most of the time. Now that the context of the attic layout is taken care of, the important bits to these occurrences are the 3 removable wall panels. These things weren't just loosely put in place. They did take deliberate effort to remove. I think you know where I'm going with this. Oftentimes, while I was hanging out up there, at least the panel at the landing up top would pop out of its place on the wall, with enough energy to slide down the stairs and crash into the door at the bottom. The panels are like roughly 3 feet tall, and there was at least that length between the last step and the wall. If it was the panel above the door, well, that required even less to make a ruckus because there was only like an 8 to 10 inch ledge next to the wall on the right that you had to shimmy across to get access to the panel above the door. I remember it being about the width of a VHS tape. Naturally, that panel comes off the wall and it's crashing down the 10 plus feet to the foot of the stairs, and it's going to make a racket. This was the common version of the events, and this began happening more and more the longer I would spend my time up there from 6th to 8th grade. Typically, I would just pick whatever panel up and put it back in place, then continue whatever I was doing. One time in particular, though, I was sitting in my chair playing PS1 for a long gaming session one summer afternoon. I got up to use the bathroom on the 2nd floor. I make my way toward the stairs, only getting a couple of feet away from the chair and towards the stairway. All of a sudden, both of the panels in the stairway simultaneously fly off the walls and collide in midair, crashing to the stairs, door below, and the panel in the closet shot off of that wall with the same intensity, if not greater, directly into the chair I was just sitting in. I ran downstairs scared shitless and didn't go back up there for a few hours. To put it in perspective, let's say these panels left their respective walls with roughly the same force as if there were vehicle airbags being deployed behind them. The first generation ones, not the modern stuff that isn't quite as powerful. These were also 3/4 of an inch thick or inch thick wood panels, old school shit. Getting hit by one of those like that would have fucked up a grown-ass man, let alone a 12 to 14-year-old scrawny kid. And no, it wasn't a draft or a stormy weather thing. It happened regardless of the weather conditions outside. I recall one of the less explosive events. I picked up the panel from the bottom of the stairs and put it snugly back in the wall, turned around and took a few steps back to my half of the attic, and it did the same thing. I straight up said, "All right, I'm leaving," packed it up, and did something elsewhere. Most of these events would have been during middle school in the late 90s, which was when I was allowed to take over that spot, and we moved out of there when I was entering high school in 2000. These things did occur at other times when nobody was up there, usually at night. I heard quite a lot of shit happen up there at all hours. My room was right next to the door leading up there, under my father's side of the attic. However, the frequency at which they happened dramatically increased once I began spending my free time up there. I know for a fact that At least 2 of my friends during that time had experienced these events as well while they were over my house and we were hanging out up there. And so did my younger brother of 3 years. Regrettably, I was kind of an asshole to him around that time. Myself and one of said friends had locked him up there, either shortly before or during one of these episodes. He was screaming and crying to be let out of there. Dick move, I know, but middle school boys, what do you expect? So I drove by the place last summer and it looked like it was either being totally renovated or prepped for demolition. I got it in my head that I need to go talk to the current homeowners just to see if they had experienced anything similar in the time they've lived there, but I never went through with it. I also drove by the place earlier this summer and it looks like it was done with renovation. There's some improvements that can be seen from the street and the dumpsters are gone. Still didn't find the stones to go ring the doorbell though. Recounting this story also brought something to my attention. That attic door had a hook and loop latch on the second floor side to keep the door closed. The previous homeowners to my family had put that there, but it didn't register why to me as a kid. Now it's dawned on me why it was there. One of those panels would blow the door wide open when they crashed into it. I've seen it happen if we forgot to set the latch. I used to not believe in shadow people at all until I believe I saw one a few years ago. My friend and I were walking around my quiet suburban neighborhood around 3 a.m. one night, something we used to do all the time for years. There's a cool pond a few houses down that we used to go to and smoke at back in the day, till new owners anyhow. So we're almost back to my house and turn right onto my street. There's a street lamp at that intersection. My house is the first one after the house on the corner, and the next street lamp is right after my house. The other corner house there has a stretch of woods that gets no illumination from the intersection light, and the light past my house doesn't illuminate anything till about halfway through the neighbor across the street from me's house. Basically, there's a decent stretch of more or less complete darkness. As we're a few steps down my street, I spot an even darker, totally pitch black figure walking on the opposite side of the street, same direction we're headed, maybe 3 to 4 car lengths ahead of us. We would have seen them before we turned onto my street, as the street we had just been walking on is straight and well lit. I covertly try to tell him to be quiet since there's another person ahead of us, and I was getting bad vibes. He wasn't paying attention. As the figure gets into the range of my streetlight's illumination, so I had been watching it walk for like another 5 or 6 car lengths, it simply vanished into thin air. I was convinced this was some guy walking alone in the middle of the night for some reason. Initially, I thought it was a dog walker. It was that clearly defined. I was more concerned with them calling the cops on us than anything. Then when they abruptly ceased to exist, I was like, what the actual fuck did I just see? When I say this figure was darker than the natural darkness of that stretch, I'm not exaggerating. I could see it clear as day, and it's gone like it was never there. I legitimately thought it was a person, and watched it for maybe an entire minute. Never had anything like that in front of my house before this, nor since that night. My friend saw it too. It's not like I imagined it. My buddy and I had been trying to find this cursed place called Little People Village. Spoiler, it's not cursed. It's a tourist trap from like 100 years ago in the woods, which ultimately wound up being several miles away. But the online trail to find it was convoluted back then. So we find this place in our travels and decide to explore it. Situated right off a main highway off-ramp, probably about 3 to 4 exits away from the asylum earlier, there was a decent-sized pond in the back section of the complex. Parking lot was nestled up against the tree line, so it was no problem hiding the truck in the corner. Worst came to worst, we had a mutual friend that lived in the adjacent neighborhood. The story takes place after we had been there probably a half-dozen times already. We knew the ins and outs of the place pretty well. We'd explored pretty much everything in the buildings already, but we kept going back. There was plenty of evidence that other people visited there. Never ran into anybody, though. And when I say we knew the layout, we knew that shit. Found every little hidey hole hidden behind shit and everything. We combed through that joint. So we're on ground floor this one fall afternoon. The building we were in was shaped like a plus sign. We were in the center where there was like a reception area or some shit. Wings went left, right, and center. both on our floor and above. All of a sudden, there was the sound of a heavy-ass 200-plus pounds guy running in boots at full speed in the wing above us, to the left of center. Since we were both like 18-year-old bucks and we had really real-looking pellet guns on us, we were like, fuck it. My friend rushed down the hallway to the stairwell that would head off the running man. I went down the right hallway to the opposite stairwell so I could prevent them from doubling back if they ran into my friend first. We met up having no sign of the guy. We even meticulously searched that wing where one of us would stay in the hall while the other searched a room. After about 45 minutes of looking around, we called it quits. Already been there probably close to 2 hours at that point. As we exited the complex and were walking back to the truck, I had a distinct feeling on my back that I was being watched. Apparently my friend did too, as we both turned around at about the same time, not having said anything to each other. At this point, we were probably about halfway across the parking lot back to his truck. What we saw, though, it doesn't make much sense. So in the corner window in the wing, we heard the footsteps in. There was a ghastly pale face. It did not match the physical characteristics of what I heard, that's for sure. It almost looked disembodied. I can't be sure if it was a crackhead or a ghost, to be honest. If it was a person, they were squirrely as hell because we couldn't find them, period. The place has long been demolished, but the land is a swanky apartment condo complex now. That one dude's mom still lives over there around the corner. I miss these old abandoned places. Seems like 99% of the ones I used to frequent are gone now. My best friend and I were seniors in high school at this time, a crisp late September afternoon in New England in 2003. We were on an urban exploration kick, and we set our sights on an abandoned sanatorium asylum complex near us. It wasn't truly abandoned, though, as some buildings housed a state police barracks and some other state programs. We didn't know a ton about the history of the place at the time, just the bare bones info. We took my friend's Ford Ranger out there, to one of the first buildings in the complex. Well before you would get to the occupied state buildings and nowhere near the main building of the institution at the very rear. Bear in mind, this is maybe a quarter mile into the woods. The left border was next to a local highway, and the rear border was woods and a very prominent 500 to 700 foot ridge. Right side was more woods and rugged ridge terrain with a Target up the road. Across the street from Target is the local mall. On the other side of the bridge going over the highway was a 24-hour gas station and a strip mall, followed by some projects. I never really encountered any undesirable people in the thousands of times I've been over that way. At most, there would be people walking down the sidewalk to the mall or grabbing smokes at the gas station. We pull up behind a smaller building onto a courtyard that puts us out of view of the access road and any occupied buildings further up. We lock up the truck and walk around the perimeter of the building. I'd guess it was in the range of about 3,000 square feet. It took about 1 to 2 minutes to walk around the outside once, and it was basically the size of an upper middle class house in my area. As we round the corner and the truck is in view again, we're both like WTF. Every single thing that could be opened on the truck was open. Doors, windows, hood, tailgate, the locked diamond plate bed toolbox, etc. We freaked out, then promptly closed everything back up and noped right the fuck out of there. By the way, there was absolutely not enough time for some crackhead or whatever to do all that manually, nor were there any signs of forced entry. Obviously, nobody was around, and nothing was missing from the truck. After we got back, I did some more digging on the place online, and wouldn't you know it, I found some chilling information that fits 100% with what happened to us. So there were obviously many deaths on the property over the years due to the nature of the facility being primarily for terminally ill children, but there was one story that kept popping up. It was about a child that had been shanked to death by other children in an outside courtyard at one of the auxiliary buildings. Pretty sure that was the culprit. I had my friend come look at my monitor to read what I had found about the area, and he agreed that had to be what we encountered. Again, there was nobody around when we took that brief walk around the building. I don't even think we were there on the grounds for more than 5 minutes tops, from entering the service road to exiting after the scare, and we would have definitely noticed a person skulking around that area as we were driving up. I should also note that a different time later into the following spring, I went with some people to the main building, all the way at the rear of the complex. It was just going to be a quick drive through and snap a few pictures with the digital camera. We got about to the center of the rear of the building. I had maybe taken 3 pictures by this point, and all of a sudden we were surrounded by state police on both sides of the car. Everyone got a hefty trespassing ticket, being high schoolers, for our failed recon trip. There's also a few other kids I knew that had stories of being busted almost immediately once they were spotted. I'm just trying to emphasize that it was not a living person that messed with my friend's truck. The police would have busted us. A druggie would have stolen or damaged something or even tried to rob us. And there was not a single person around at that time, nor was there enough time for them to do what they did manually.